This podcast is for singers who have music in their soul and want to be in the spotlight. We are INVICTA Vox Radio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of INVICTA Vox Radio. As always, we are your hosts, Mike and
Angie Lee.
And today we are going to be talking about shoes. Shoes. Do you remember that song?
Oh yeah, it's so classic. It's like that thing. It's like, what era of YouTuber are you?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, it's shoes.
And that's definitely
Shoes.
fairly early
That's
YouTube.
a fairly early YouTube thing. It's not as early as Sneezing Panda, but it's up there.
So we're not actually talking about shoes, but we're using shoes as an analogy for growth. Shoes.
I can't get out of my head anymore. We're actually talking about leveling up. Your
Leveling
game.
up.
Yeah.
It's how are you growing? And Angie brought up this great analogy about shoes. So I'll just let you lead off kind of with the analogy, and then we'll talk about the kind of each phase of that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I think it's really weird when people are like, hey, we got to level up our game. And it's like, yeah, let's level up. What does that even mean? And, the idea of level up definitely comes from like gaming, right? Like, level up your dude, is right. I'm not a gamer.
Dude.
I'm not a gamer, but
level up your dude. But yeah,
but
I get what
right.
you mean.
It
like
comes from gaming.
Role-playing games and stuff like that.
Yeah,
where you're constantly
like level
leveling.
up.
Yeah.
Or like even go back to Mario, we got to level up. We're going to go level up. So it's this idea of leveling up, and you hear it a lot in the self-help world and from a lot of entrepreneurial mentors. And so I want to talk about what that actually means for artists and for you, and see if we can come to terms with what leveling up is for you. And describe that at a different level. So think about when you're like a kid and we're like in the thick of it because we have an 8-year-old who like grows like a freaking weed right now, and she's a flower. But she grows all the time. And when you're a kid, your parents have to buy you a new wardrobe every single year. It's like, okay, I'm 8, so now we're going to go to size 8. I'm 9, now we're like going up to size 9, And it's crazy because when you first get your whole new wardrobe or all your new clothes in the new size, they're all too big. And you see this, like, kids are wearing baggy clothes for a little while, and then after a few months, they grow into them and the clothes fit perfectly. And it's like, wow, that's a great fitting shirt there. Or shoes, we can talk about your shoes. It's the same thing where your shoes start out a little too big every time you go up to the next size, and then they start to fit really well. And then there's that point where they start to feel too tight. And it's like with my daughter, all of a sudden her perfect t-shirt that fit her perfectly, it started out baggy, now it's fitting perfectly. Now it's a belly shirt, right? Or those shoes are just squeezing your feet and your toenails are hurting and you're growing. And so you literally grow out of them, and at some point they're either going to bust your toe through the front of the shoe or you're going to get a new shoe, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this idea of then going up a size. We're leveling up in size. And that's such a cool way of looking at it, because usually when you go to the next size as a kid, the shoe's too loose again, right? And every time you take that step, it's funny because when you start out, the shoes start out being uncomfortable because it's like, well, they're a little too big and I can't really run very well in them. And because, I might trip over my own shoes because they're bigger than my feet, right? And then all of a sudden they fit perfectly because your feet grow. And you can run in them, and you can play any sport. You have like a lot more dexterity. You can go race. You can do a marathon and feel like completely comfortable. It's almost like that shoe becomes part of your foot, right? Like it's just easy to be in that shoe at that moment. But the second it starts to feel tight because you've outgrown it, it gets uncomfortable again. And that's the thing that I want to point out is the discomfort, the levels of discomfort within a level, because if you can pay attention to that in your own journey, that's going to be the signal to you to level up. Because if you have that discomfort of starting something new, then you get comfortable because you've expanded and grown into it. But then as you continue to grow, it gets uncomfortable again. And it's a different type of discomfort than when you start something new. And so if you can pinpoint that moment of this level is uncomfortable because I have outgrown it, I am bigger than this, then you can choose to go to the next step, to go to the next size of shoe. And too often, I think people get stuck in, well, it's starting to feel a little tight because I'm growing and I'm getting big. Okay, I'm just going to stay here. I actually want to be comfortable still, because having to go through that discomfort over and over again is a pain. Like, we don't actually want to do it.
Right. And even though it is a little bit uncomfortable, right, because you know you should move up to the next size, sometimes you get that big fish in a little pond mentality, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh man, I'm killing this level. And it's like, okay, yeah, but I mean, you're never going to progress beyond this, because you're at your ceiling right now, right? You got to move up to that next
and you
level.
Either have to get comfortable with being in that place and just like not growing anymore, or you do have to break through. And I had an experience with this at a local venue recently where it's a stage that a lot of artists in our area aspire to play on. And it's actually, in non-COVID times, a very difficult venue to get into as an artist, and you kind of have to pay your dues. You like start out by going to open mics and then get noticed and get invited to play shows and festivals, and eventually maybe you can headline. It's a difficult thing to work into. And I remember the first time I had an opportunity to play on the stage a long time ago, and it was like, oh man, we got on the bill for a battle of the bands. We're actually going to play the stage. And it was such a big deal.
Yeah.
And it was like, I couldn't breathe. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. We have to do such a good job. And the stage felt so big for me. And I remember being backstage and being like, oh my gosh, I have to kill this. I have to prove myself. And I was just being so excited and so nervous. And then we got up and played the show. And it was like that for the first few times that we played this venue. Like, I was like, man, I just feel so uncomfortable, but so excited. And, I'm going to build into this. And then it got to the point where the stage was just like my home, right? Like, this specific venue was like, okay, it became my home. Like, I'm comfortable here. I know the staff. I know we're going to have a great show. The crowd is here for me, and I've built into this, and this is me now. And this is such a cool, big thing, because everyone's trying so hard to get to this level. But it was such a weird and interesting thing, because in the last couple of weeks I was there again, and I was sitting back and just looking at the venue and looking at the stage and the audience and everything. And I was just like, man, this feels small.
Yeah.
And it was weird, because I was like, man, like, this stage used to feel so big for me. It used to be uncomfortable because it was too big for me. Now it's uncomfortable because I'm too big for it. And I looked at you that night and I was like, I have to level up. It's time for me to do something else that's going to scare me instead of just make me uncomfortable, right? And so that's just another way of looking at it now, coming out of this shoe analogy and going into me as my career. Like, I'm too big for this space now. So what am I going to do next? And I think that's the hardest part, is people are like, a lot of times they'll jump way too far out for their next step, and they'll skip, they're maybe they need to go up to like size 2 in shoes because they're a size 1. And instead of going to the size 2, they go to like size 10. Right. And skipping ahead, that's a whole other problem, because then they go like, oh, this is too hard, and they quit.
Well, and that's almost like when you were talking about before, tripping on your feet, right? If you go way too big, yeah, you're going to trip, you're going to fall down. And
it's not going to just be a little uncomfortable. It's going to be
the problem
failure.
Is you're going to do it repeatedly because you're just not ready for that level yet, right? So that's where it becomes very discouraging, and like, oh, I'm never going to make it at this.
Right.
And that's where there's steps. There should be increments that you're pushing yourself
in synchronicity.
Towards. So rather than taking that big leap and then just falling flat on your face over and over again.
Right.
It's take that next step where it's uncomfortable and definitely a challenge, but not so over challenging that it becomes overwhelming and you just
that you can't even
feel like
it.
A failure and like you'll never make it.
Right. And that's the big thing, is knowing, okay, I'm feeling this discomfort because I'm too big for this space. What's the next step? And asking yourself, okay, what's going to be the next thing I can do to make the shoes a little too big, to be a little too small for this room, right? Not like, okay, I'm going to go from a cute local venue to an arena with 30,000 people. Like, that's not the next step. That's not even within the realm of the next shoe size, right? So it's really being able to be real with where you're at and living in your facts, because if you are in la land of where you want to be and you think you're at a higher level than you actually are, that's another issue too, because you're like, I know I'm a size 1, but I feel like I'm a size 9. It's like, okay, well, you're not though.
I know. And we've, luckily you talked me out of it. But at one point I remember it's like, yeah, we've never held a show or promoted a show. I'm like, yeah, there's no problem. We could get 5,000 to 10,000 people there easy. And it was like, okay, let's slow down. Let's shoot for like 500 first.
And we didn't even make that.
And we fell flat on
like
our
the first
faces
time we
for
promoted
that.
a show.
So
we got 35.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, I was shooting for the stars,
which is really smart. Like, it's not that that's a bad thing. We always talk about having your goal out in front of you, what you eventually want to gain and what you want to get. But it's nice to know that. But the important thing is understanding the gap in between it. And that's how you know which level to go to next. If you know what your gap is and you are very strategic about the steps you have to take to get to point B, then you can go, okay, I'm at, there's 10 steps to get to point B. I'm just saying 10 because it's an easy number, right? I'm at point A, 10 steps to get to point B. I've just completed level 1 of what that is. So now it's time to level up to level 2. And the more you can live in your facts and the more you can live in what is firmly yours right now and where you are at with your skills and your, resources and your teams and everything like that, then you can take strategic steps to the next thing. But the problem people have the most is either they stay at the level they're at because they don't want to get uncomfortable in the next level. Because, man, it sucks to keep getting uncomfortable over and over again. It's not fun. It's exciting, but it can really be a pain. It can be, actually exhausting and like hard. And so it's not something you always want to do. But you can either stay at the level you're at and be comfortable and realize that you're never going to get to point B and just settle for that. Or you can recognize, okay, I have to take these strategic steps. I'm too big for this level or this room now, so it's time to go to the next one. And be in synchronicity with that. So you can strategically get what you want.
And here's kind of another thought to go along with that. If you never get to the point that you're uncomfortable, then you're not growing.
No.
Right? You're just stagnating. And it's okay if you have moments where you're in that phase where you just, you're trying to figure things out. You're not really at that point of growth, but eventually you should be growing in whatever area you're focusing on and then getting to that next level. If you're not, then you need to start asking yourself questions or start looking for, ways to grow and develop and get to where you are uncomfortable at where you're at.
Yeah. I 100% agree. So what I want to talk about really quickly is like hypothetically what it would mean to level up for someone from point A to point B, just so you guys can get an even clearer picture about this. Because another problem we can face is that you could go to the next level to start to work on things that are hard for you, but oftentimes we take on too much, right? And I was saying we could skip ahead, but you could also just be like, I'm going to take on 3 levels at the same time. It's like, no. One thing at a time. You do not have enough energy and focus to be able to do so many things and achieve them. So it's like, what's the one thing I can do next to knock down all the dominoes? So like say point A is I've never done anything as an artist, and point B is I want to record an album. Okay. Right. We'll just go with that. I'm an independent artist. I'm not signed, so I'm going to do all of this on my own. And then it's like, okay, point A, point B. Okay, what's our time frame that we're aiming for on this? Okay, I want to do, maybe let's just scale it back to like a 5 song EP because I've never done this before. And I haven't written any of the songs. So I am going to say that I want to do this in 1 year. I feel like, by the way, guys, that's a really quick project if you haven't even started it yet. But we'll just say that. We'll say it's 1 year. And I want to do a 5-song EP. And I haven't started. I've never done it before. So, Mike, what would you say some of those strategic steps are that we have to do in order to get to that and to like build into that? Because one is probably going to be some skill development, right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it always starts with skill development. Do you have the skills necessary to even be able to pull it off, right? And if you don't, then you need to get the skills. You need to acquire the skills or build a team that has the skills that can help you out. Right. And again, we talked about that in previous episodes where it's like in order to build that team and cover those gaps, you have to have certain resources to be able to do it. If you're going to, if you don't have those resources available, then you got to do it on your own, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, you build your team or develop your skills. Do you have that covered? If that base is covered and you have all that, then the next thing would be to write a group of songs.
You got to write the songs first.
Right. You got to write a group of songs. And we always talk about how, typically in the beginning, most artists, if you're going to record a song, I would write 10 songs for every one that you record. Mm-hmm. Because really, I mean, writing something that you really want to put in the resources to go out and record, you want it to be your best work, and your best work is going to require you to do a lot more, right?
Yeah, the Nashville rule. In Nashville, you're not even considered a songwriter for real unless you've written 200 songs. So that's something to consider.
and so
your first song isn't going to be your best one you've ever written, and you might also need to put together some collaborators. Like, especially if you're new to the game, right? We're talking about someone who's never done this before. So yeah, then, building the skills, like, can you sing? Can you play an instrument? Do you understand the fundamentals of songwriting? And then once you have that, it's like, okay, next level up. We're going to write 50 songs. I'm going to aim to write 50 songs. We're just, again, throwing out a hypothetical, right? It doesn't have to be this. It's like, okay, now I've written 50 songs. Now what?
And in my head, at that point, I would actually perform a lot of those songs and see what resonates with people.
Yeah, so also simultaneously could be getting a lot of performing experience, going up to open mics or playing them for groups of people who can give you honest and good feedback about which songs are their best songs.
Yeah, because ultimately the market's going to decide what's best, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you can have your idea of what songs you like the best, but if you want people to if you're trying to build a base quicker, you need to find what resonates with other people, right?
And you can do that, test it with like live videos and things like that too.
Yeah, and then once you kind of narrow down all these songs that you've written, then you're going into a pre-production mode and then production.
So the next level would be pre-production, and we can do another episode on just what that entails. But getting ready for the sessions, making sure you're not going to waste time in the studio, getting everything organized and prepared for that. Recording scratch vocals and all kinds of things like that. So then the next level would be, finding a producer and getting into a studio and actually starting to create the songs. And then as you're doing that, building out, a launch, an idea for how you're going to launch the album and how you're going to promote it, and then being able to plan out that. And so we're leveling up and learning marketing at that point, and learning how to network with other people to get your songs on playlists and all this stuff. So it's not like it's just this thing of, I'm going to start taking lessons and then I'm going to produce an album. It's like, no. There's a synchronicity to it to make it as surefire as you can make it, and to make it run well, and to grow and expand along the way. Because if you just all of a sudden jump into marketing and you haven't even recorded an album yet, that doesn't make sense.
Right. And really, so that's kind of the macro journey, right? The big journey that you're moving towards. But even every one of those other steps has its own little journey along with it, right? Like, even take your vocals, for example, right?
Right.
Like, work your way up to where you can perform a certain level of song. But if you're nailing that over and over and over again, don't just stop there. Move yourself to the next level. Push yourself to that next level. Add more tools to the toolbox. Mm-hmm. Don't just get complacent with like, oh, I can crush indie songs every time, right? Because there's like most of them, there's very little range to it and everything else. So yeah, congratulations. Now take a step up, force yourself to do something more, and just keep adding to where you're at. Keep growing.
Here I come.
Yeah, no doubt.
So you can take it as like you said, like a huge project. You can think of it as launching yourself as a total artist. Like, I'm at point A, I haven't done anything, but in 10 years from now, I want to be this massive A-list artist. I mean, you could look at it that way, or like you said, look at it from your journey and perspective of just taking a music lessons, and how you level up every single time you go to a lesson. And so it's that idea of jumping into something new and being too small for it and feeling uncomfortable, expanding and growing so that it's something you can run with, and then getting to the point where it's uncomfortable again because you're too big for it. And that's when we move again and again and again and again. And the process just repeats itself. But in a long-winded explanation, that's what leveling up means. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's just about growth, right?
Yeah.
And
it's about recognizing when you need to push yourself.
Yeah, and just making sure that you're taking a look at it and analyzing your growth and making sure that you are in this continual pattern of leveling up and really pushing yourself and making sure that you are still growing. Because again, if you don't feel that uncomfortable situation, or you don't feel like, oh man, I'm crushing this over and over and over again, right? If you haven't hit that and you continually feel like, oh, these shoes are too big for me, then you got to find a way to get to where it feels comfortable.
Yeah.
So do whatever's necessary to say, hey, I'm not growing in this area for whatever reason. I got to find that missing piece of the puzzle so that way I can start to move up, level up.
Yeah, I like it. Awesome. I think that's it.
All right. And with that, we will bring you the question of the day. All
Shoes.
Right. So get out your pens, your pencils, your markers, your laptops,
your phone,
the comment section, whatever it may be, and just ask yourself or answer this question. You don't even need to ask yourself. We're asking you right now. But
declare it.
Yeah. So where do you need to level up?
Yeah.
Right? What's going on? Where are you allowing yourself to be big fish in a little pond and need to level up? And again, if you feel like you're doing really well, where do you maybe need to level down?
That's what I was just gonna say. Do you need to level up, or are you the person that jumped ahead 10 levels and are maybe like, you know what, I need to scale back just a little bit and get focused on this one thing to really move the needle?
Yeah.
What is it? What is the one thing you need to do today?
All right, so answer that question. And as always, please, if you know anybody who would benefit from this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe,
and
share.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. Yeah, that's going to be one. Maybe the next podcast episode we should do is about getting the
likes.
No, our Facebook year or YouTube year in review. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
But anyways,
that'd
guys,
be fun.
Until next time.